Oh, shoot. I messed it up, boys. What's up, everybody? My name is Kyle Roscoe, and welcome to episode number 20 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing podcast. Guys, it is the penultimate podcast for the absolute massive week that we've had here on the HHH Racing podcast. This is the 7th out of 8th total podcast for the entire week. And man, have we got a good one for you guys tonight. We are going over the 2-day Pick6, which includes the La Troyenne, the Kentucky Oaks, the Derby City Distaff, the Churchill Downs Stakes, the Edgewood Turf, and not the Edgewood Turf, excuse me. That's the one on Kentucky Oaks Day, the Turf Classic, and of course, the 149th running of the Kentucky Derby. Guys, if you are new here and you find yourself coming back on the regular and you aren't subscribed, why not? You're already coming back anyway. Please go below the video player and hit the subscribe button. And while you're down there, please hit like on this video as it sends out this video out to many people, as this, like I said yesterday, is the biggest week for horse racing. So guys, if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you see scrolling on the bottom of the screen here, my email is bettinandboozin@gmail.com. That is with no G's. It is bettinandboozin@gmail.com, just like the title says on the YouTube video. And keep an eye out for tomorrow for our final podcast of the week. It is a full roundtable with every single host, me, Charlie, Patrick, Paul, Pete, and of course the boss Howard, with our special guest, great contest player, and Matt Miller. We will all be talking Kentucky Derby. So if you are interested in that, please come in tomorrow. That is at 8 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Everyone, if you are more of an audio listener, please go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor, and please rate, review, and subscribe over on those platforms. We would greatly appreciate it. Although I do recommend you guys coming over to YouTube to watch the full experience with us and the PPs up. But if you are more of an audio listener, please go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Guys, this is the last day to get in on the power picks before we send out. Actually, well, technically tomorrow will be the last day, but don't get in too late because our Oaks picks are going out Thursday night. So if you are at all interested, these are very, very affordable picks that we have done very well on. We're well above the average horse player ROI, and it's only $4 a weekend, so which means you get both the Oaks and the Derby card full of picks, spot plays, pick fives, pick fours, pick threes, everything you could want for only $4 this weekend, which is, you'll not get that price anywhere else. So guys, if you're all interested, please go to patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. And like I said, better hurry up because those picks are going to be coming out fast. And of course, thanks to our wonderful sponsor that makes this entire series possible, BetUS, our fantastic sports betting and casino platform, which is live with 200 games per day to bet on, with 300 and 400 different props to bet. If you are depositing money, please go and use Racing3H, the code Racing3H when depositing money, and you'll get a free 125% back if you deposit $100 or more. And for everything us and everything Power Picks related, please go to our great website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Guys, I don't want to dilly-dally any longer, as we have a lot of races to cover, a lot of depth to cover over. I'll go over the comments, as of course, before we get started, but I'm going to bring on my one co-host here. Patrick is having a little bit of connection issues. He'll be on in a little bit, but from The Ohio State University, my friend, Charlie Freeman. What's going on, man?
Not much. I've been really looking forward to tonight. We got some great races to break down, so I'm excited.
Yeah, some great races, both from a betting standpoint, not just because it's Oaks and Derby Day, but there are some heavy favorites and there are some races that are just really like wide open. In a way, you'll have horses that you'll recognize, some horses that are coming up for the first time to these stakes. And I mean, what's better? It's Oaks Day and Derby Day. There's really nothing better.
Nothing like it.
And a very creative way to encapsulate both our Oaks and Derby picks. This will be the first time we're giving those picks out on air, as we did a show for the Oaks on Monday, but we didn't go into the handicapping at all. It was just a first look. So this will be our time to give out our Oaks and Derby picks before tomorrow, of course. So like I stated at the beginning of the video, this is the 2-day Pick6 and encapsulates 2 races on Friday and 4 races on Saturday. They are all grade 1s. It starts on Friday with the race 9, the La Troyenne, going into the Kentucky Oaks. Then on Saturday, it starts in race 4, or not starts, but it continues in race 4 with the Derby City Distaff, going on to the Churchill Downs race 10, the Turf Classic race 11, and of course, finishing with the 149th running of the Kentucky Derby. Charlie, we're going to get into it right away here, but I want to say hi to all the beautiful people that are watching from home. Thank you to all that watched Howard, Pete, and Paul's Kentucky Derby late pick 5. It was an absolutely great show where they gave out their picks for the Kentucky Derby. If you have not seen that, please go back and watch it after this video, of course, but go back and watch it. It ended up being a really good show. They also had Jim Miller on, who is the color man at Hawthorne. He does so much for the horse racing industry. He also gave out his picks on that show. So please go watch after this show if you have not already. Steven Vanderbrook, what's going on, my friend? Good evening. Thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Richard Alvalar's here again. Happy Hump Day, Derby Day week, of course, and happy to get into these picks. Richard, thanks so much for joining the show. Jeffrey Wilson, what's up, man? How's it going? It's Derby week, absolutely. My favorite, the Pick6. We're gonna absolutely hammer it, and like I said, this is a bet you really don't get any other day through the year. Breeders' Cup does something similar to this, but including the Oaks and the Derby into a Pick6 is an absolutely great. I love this wager. So, Richard, we'll definitely be hammering it for sure. After I finish my golf prep, hey, I know that all too well, Jeffrey. So again, thanks for coming out. I greatly appreciate it, though, my friend. Open D, I don't know if I've ever seen your name before. Thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Paul Halloran, and yeah, both Paul. I don't think Howard's left yet, but Paul is in the Bluegrass State going to the Kentucky Derby, of course, with the Saratoga Special. Paul, thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it. Jim Pillar's, the crap is already starting.
You knew it was going to happen
I know,
at some point.
but the best part is that I may be going with some heavy favorites, but I also have a little bit of good stuff underneath. So, Jim, you be ready for that chalk sandwich that's coming your way, of course. Jeffrey Wilson, everyone, hey, again, very astute viewer, my friend. Please hit the like button. We would greatly appreciate it. And Simon O'Neill, this man, it's like 2 a.m. in the UK, and man's still up getting
Really
his Derby prep
That's
on.
awesome.
It is awesome. And of course, I mean, there's only one way to consume the Derby content, right? And that is having to stay up till 2 in the morning. But greatly appreciate it. But Charlie, I was gonna try to delay for Patrick, but he'll come on, I'm sure, as we're talking about this race. But I'll let you go first. As stated,
the one other thing I would say we should clarify, just for the viewers to know if they choose to bet this race. Obviously, aside from the fact that it's 6 races in over 2 days, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this one different from most bets in that instead of it being a 50-cent minimum, it's $1?
Yes, I was going to touch on that after we gave it out at the end, but yes, this is a dollar wager. That is one thing to keep in mind, that obviously most pick 4s, pick 5s, the minimum bet is 50 cents, but now this is a minimum dollar bet. So it was hard for us because there's a lot of races in here. You can go many different ways. So obviously it basically halves the amount of wiggle room that you have to make the budget that we get on the show, which for the Derby, we're decided to sprinkle a little more. We're going with $100 budget, but you'll see our tickets at the end. Charlie, thanks for bringing that up. I greatly appreciate it. Guys, Charlie, we're going to get right into it here. We're going to start off with the La Troyenne Stakes. It is going a mile and a 16th on the dirt for fillies and mares, 4-year-old and up. And what do you know? One of the queens is back. It is Secret Oath, the number 4. Once I'm able to share my screen here, and there we go, touching all the buttons here. But it is the morning line favorite is the number 4, the queen herself, Secret Oath, for Gaffleone and D. Wayne Lucas. And the second choice is on the outside, or both the 2 and the 7 are co-favorites, between Search Results and Society, with the 4th choice being Played Hard at 9-2 on the rail. Charlie, as I bring up the picks right now, are you starting it off being a chalk-eating weasel?
I have to, and it's not because I want to. It's because, number one, again, everybody who knows me knows Tyler's my boy. And number 2, everybody also knows, unfortunately, that me and Kyle were on the wrong end of this. I think Patrick might have been too with Clairiere. and we got all that shit from Howard. So
Yep.
I'm riding Tyler again. I'm riding Secret Oath. I'm banking on it. I think this horse should, and I do expect it to win this race. Obviously, I mean, it ran a really solid race last time out. It just unfortunately wasn't the better horse on that day. Yeah, we had to eat a fair amount of crap for going wrong on that, but I'm backing the horse. I'm trusting it to prove me right this time around. And yeah, I mean, I'm hopefully not getting let down by Secret Oath again, but I do believe in this horse. I like the distance. I like the way the race, in my eyes, I think it'll set up. I think there is enough pace, like with horses like Search Results and Society in this race. I do think there is enough early speed that'll help this horse be able to sit a nice trip as well. I do really like Secret Oath in this spot. And I mean, I don't know about the 3-to-1 price in terms of what you'll get. I think it probably will be around there. I think this horse should go off as the favorite. But yeah, I like everything about Secret Oath. Been working well as well. I think this is a good spot for Secret Oath here.
I do too. I think this is a good spot, even though she is coming back a little quick. She ran in the Apple Blossom about 3 weeks ago, and it will be 3 weeks to about the day on Oaks Day as she ran in the Apple Blossom. I think this race sets up really well for her. I decided to not be a chalk eating weasel to start this pick off, and neither did Patrick. Patrick is going with my horse, but realistically, I don't think there's too much we have to touch on with Secret Oath. There's a lot of speed in this race. At least there looks like on paper. I think that like Charlie pointed out, this race sets up really well for her. That first race in the Azeri coming back was really strong. I cannot believe that she got caught by Clarier. I said it on the show. I said I think Clarier is the better horse, but I think she just gets tripped out in this one and then absolutely nabbed me on the wire and the rest of us that were singled to Secret Oath in that race. But I'm hoping that, or not hoping, because I actually don't have her on top, but I think she gets a really nice trip in this spot. Patrick, though, my friend, again, every time I think I'm going to stick out with a non-chalk pick, one of these guys comes and nabs me on the wire like Clarier. Patrick, what'd you like most about Amore?
Yeah, this weekend either going to go up and be unbelievable or go down in flames between me and Kyle because we have a lot of the same picks. But Amore, listen, I mean, 3 for 3 in its last 3 starts, tactical speed with an outside draw, really impressive win in the Beholder Mile, coming from off the pace to nail Fun to Dream. I just think this horse is going to thrive with that outside post, like I said, and this field, Secret Oath's going to probably tactical speed as well. Search Results, who I think is going to be more in front. I just think Amore is going to love this pace setup and should thrive at a decent price.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you as I also have this horse on top. Amore, the one thing that scares me about Amore, I think you're going to get a good price, which is why I put this horse on top. She's very, just based on replays alone, she looks very grindy. Like she doesn't necessarily have that late, like really dash down the stretch. She seems more grindy. She wears down the opponents. That's why you don't see very big numbers coming out at 92, 95, but more on the end, the win margin end, where she only won by a head last time to Fun to Dream and a half length to Lovely Ride. Obviously the race back at Fairgrounds, but that was a little bit farther back in the good. Although it rained at Santa Anita last time for the Boulder Mile. I just really think this horse is progressing with every single race since she turned 4. And I really like her to take a big step up and maybe get a little bit of a jump on Secret Oath. Maybe she sits somewhere towards the middle, although Secret Oath has been that type of horse with a little bit of tactical speed as well. But judging price, you're going to get Cox Giroux probably about that 5-to-1 mark. And with a great improving 4-year-old filly, I'm willing to take a shot with this horse at 5-to-1. But Secret Oath is definitely the horse to beat. Patrick, you have the horse that's getting a lot of love in the chat as well. But actually, me or Charlie don't have anywhere. And I'm looking at it from just two certain angles. But number 2 search results for Pratt and Brown. Of course, a very, very good filly at her best.
Yeah, very good. And, I'm kind of banking on that. This horse last ran at Churchill Downs in the Kentucky Oaks, which was 2 years ago now. It ran pretty good in that race. But looking more towards the future, this horse has been kind of all over the place running against Malathot, face Clarier 4 back. I part of me thinks that Chad's going to have this horse ready off the layoff and could run huge on the front end, and I don't want to leave this horse off a ticket.
Yeah, and look, she is a very, very talented filly. There's two things that I have against this horse. First of all, as I already touched on, the pace scenario. I think this pace can really heat up, and search results on the rail coming off of a longer layoff. Obviously, Chad has no problem with horses coming off of long layoffs. But if you, what I used is running from this running line. Granted, this was from 3 to 4, but coming from Saratoga in the test to Aqueduct in the distaff and the spring, she ended up losing by 13.5 to Glass Ceiling. That looks to be a much easier spot than this one. And, maybe she just doesn't run, but then she comes back in the Ruffian and runs extremely well at a mile. So, I mean, she definitely can run really big. I'm playing against that. She's going to get caught up in a hot pace on the inside, and maybe off the bench, she's not going to have enough to fire when horses like Amore and Secret Oath are running by her in the stretch. And that's just where I'm coming from. Charlie, you have the last say of our picks, and then I want to go over a few more horses before we move on. But the number 6 Classy Edition for Pletcher, a newly turned 4-year-old filly who her last 2 races, based on numbers alone, definitely needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I love everything about Classy Edition. There's no way you're getting 8-1 with Pletcher and Irad. I saw Jeffrey Wilson and I must have a lot in common because he in the chat has been saying nothing but great things about Classy Edition as well. And I agree. I mean, if you look at this horse, obviously the figures in the first, 5 races aren't anything like terrible, but nothing that would make you think this horse has a chance. And then all of a sudden this horse woke up. It's got, as you mentioned, with the reason you like the 10, that's why I like the 6. This horse is getting better and better every race. Again, I like the connections. Anytime you see Irad and Pletcher, you know that horse is going to be live. That's why I do think it will take plenty of money. I think this one will probably be 6-1 or less. And yeah, I mean, I know I went with the 4 on top, but if we want about chalk, I mean, I went with an 8-1 horse underneath. And I really do think this is the horse, for me at least, that I think has the best chance to beat Secret Oath, because I do kind of like the fact that it looks like it likes to sit off the pace. And as you kind of touched on, this is why I had the 10 and third. I had the same thought process for why you were worried about the 10. Is I watch the replays and like it has solid figures, it gets to the lead, but you're right, it's not the kind of horse that wants to have that strong kick that catches your eye and blows away the field. It kind of just stays on and just wears down, like you mentioned, and gets it done. But that's what the 6 does have. I mean, you look at its race 2 back where it was right off the pace and then just on the lead and then runs away to win by 5. That's a big thing that caught my attention with the 6. Is I think it can sit off those leaders, and it did show me that kick where if it continues to progress, I could see it turning home and flying. And it wouldn't surprise, I mean, I think Secret Oath will win and the figures back it, but it would not surprise me if Classy Edition was the first one to get the jump. I mean, it will, because it'll be farther up than Secret Oath, and Secret Oath doesn't get there in time. I really like Classy Edition, and the 8-1 stunned me. I did not think this horse would be anywhere near those odds.
Here's what I think, and here's the reason why I'm a little against Classy Edition. She's a very talented. She's the real deal. She showed it last time in the Royal Delta, beating a horse like Kathleen O. But I think she's gotten it her way every single time she's ran, at least this year, if not going back to the races she won and in New York in the State Bred Stakes. I think this horse, I mean, she sat outside the leaders both times, going around 1 turn at Gulfstream and 2 turns at Gulfstream. I just, the way that this race is going to set up, there's going to be a lot of horses, especially from the outside, that don't want to go to the lead. They're going to force Classy Edition to sit behind the pace where she hasn't been all year. This horse is probably not even going to be 8-1. I would assume this horse is going to take a little bit of money, probably bet down to 6-1, at least with Pletcher and Irad and the figures that she shows, excuse me. Like I said, it's just going to have to show. It hasn't shown any adversity to me to be willing to put this horse underneath or put this horse on my ticket with odds that the value it's going to show. And I could be completely wrong because she is a very talented filly, but I just need to see, she needs to have a little bit of adversity and not just have perfect trip after perfect trip after perfect trip. That's just my opinion. I have 2 more horses I want to touch on, or actually 3, because I have 2 long shots that I'm going to touch on here, and then I want to go over the 7 Society. I have the number 9 and third, Pauline's Pearl, and my great friend Simon O'Neill, very astute viewer, says can't see the 9 out of the frame. With the pace scenario, Simon, I can't either. she's a very talented filly. She's been running in really nice races all around the country. And I think the pace sets up to her. I don't know if she's as talented enough to win in a spot like this, but I think she's talented enough to at least come from behind and pass tired horses to hit the board. The 90, a 94, 95 buyer is going to fit the bottom flight horses. To fill out the exactas and trifectas in this race. I think the last race she really just didn't benefit. She was also in a really weird spot in the Beholder Mile. In between horses, got a cold pace to run into. I just don't know if that's exactly what she wants to do. She gets back going what she wants to do. And I think, like I keep saying, with the pace scenario, I think this one is definitely not shying away from it. I think you'll get every bit of that 8-1. Even with Asmussen, Rosario, and Stone Street, I don't think the figures shape up enough to where this horse is going to be bet down too far. I think, especially if she's double digits, she's especially worth a look underneath. And the other horse from Charles B, that's not the right comment, excuse me. Eric Anderson, sorry, they're both the same color. Desert Dawn will run big, use underneath. This is a horse that showed a lot of promise last year. Ran really big in the Santa Anita Oaks at 14-1, beating Adair Manor, who was a Baffert horse or a Yakteen horse that looked to be a pretty big player in the Kentucky Oaks last year, and just never really showed anything after that. She ran really well in the Kentucky Oaks. I actually had her in my trifecta. The only thing that let me down was Secret Oath winning. I had her underneath. I had Nest and Clairiere on top in that race, or Nest and Malathot. It was one of the two, but Secret Oath on top kind of ruined my chances there. But ever since then, she ran really well in the Torrey Pines, and the Clement Hirsch, honestly, but she had never really got back to she never really shows the figures that a lot of these horses have been running. Secret Oath has the hundreds under her belt. There's a lot of mid 90s, high 90s out there. And the 90 just doesn't really, she just seems a little slow on paper. She can definitely get up for the underneath. So I think if you're looking for a price to use underneath, Desert Dawn could definitely be one of those horses. I just don't know if she's fast enough to win, but definitely interesting, Eric. I completely agree with that comment. And the last horse we really just haven't touched on is Society. And, she showed a lot last year in the Cotillion and the Charlestown Oaks, but really just has not gotten back to that. She's gotten caught up in some paces, but I mean, the Breeders' Cup Distaff, you can take it with what you will. She was really bet down in that race, came back in the Madison turning back, and really just didn't show anything. I mean, Goodnight Olive is just an absolute monster, and she's on later in this pick 6 that we'll talk about. Mary Coin Contrary is a good horse, but ever since, I mean, she really just has 2 really good races on her card. Other than that, she's middle 80s. I mean, and a price that's going to be 4 to 5-1, that's just not going to be something I'm willing to take the chance on in this race. But again, if she gets out and clears, that's the one she can be really dangerous. I'm going 10-4-9 in this spot. Patrick's going 10-2-4. Charlie is going 4-6-10. Guys, I'm going to switch over the PPs. The next race is, of course, the Kentucky Oaks. Race 11 on Friday. They're going 1.1 miles on the dirt. Purse is $1.3 million. The favorite is the number 7, Wet Paint, at 5-2. Switching over to the Equibase right now. You can see her on the screen for Pratt and Brad Cox. And as I switch over the picks right now, what do you think? Are we all going Wet Paint, boys? We talked about it on the show. Yes, we are. We are all going Wet Paint in this spot. I'll give my opinions. I'll let the boys go first. Patrick, did I let you go first last time, or did I let Charlie go first last time?
Charlie went first because I was being dumb and didn't get on in time.
That is right. So, Patrick, you're up first, man. Why is Wet Paint the shoe-in for this race?
I wouldn't, okay, she's the favorite shoe-in, sure. I just, what? At the end of the day, she's shown me more than most of these other horses in this field. The way she's won, just, coming from off the pace and just pouncing on fields. I just think that, it's her race to lose, but with Brad Cox as the trainer, like, he knows exactly what this horse is going to need. And as long as, the horse gets out of the gate fine and finds the right spot and tucks in and, save some ground. I mean, I think this horse is just, pretty much far and away the best horse in this race. But, what's the pace going to be like? And if there is pace, Wet Paint should thrive off of it.
Yes, and I agree with you. And I think this is another race where there's going to be a lot of pace going into it. And I think Wet Paint has shown everybody why she's the deserving favorite in this Oaks. And I mean, to Jeffrey Wilson's comment she's really not slow. Like,
No, she's
there's
not.
really no filly in this. The 3-year-old fillies division this year has just been, it's a roller coaster, for lack of a better term. It's been so up and down, so many random outcomes that have shown their heads in these races. I think Wet Paint is not far and above the rest of these fillies, but she's shown why she's the deserving favorite in this year's Oaks. And I think with the pace scenario that it shows in this spot, I think she's going to get a really good run circling horses at the quarter pole, and I think she's going to really have a chance. Charlie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I want to give a quick shout out to me and Kyle for going full on chalk, where we picked the top 3 odd horses in that exact order.
Yep.
So at least Patrick chose to salvage it and not let us all do that. But yeah, no, my main concern with this race is I feel like the 6 and the 4 are the only other 2 horses that I can really see as viable winners, but they're both also going to want to go more to the front. Now, I think Botanical has more speed and has a better chance of getting to the front over Southlawn, which is why I do like the value on Southlawn. I don't think you'll get those odds. But the concern is I don't really know how Southlawn exactly wins. I think you can get in the numbers, but I don't think it's going to be fast enough to keep up with Botanical, and it certainly doesn't have enough pace at the end to keep up with Wet Paint. So it'd have to have a major improvement that I don't see, but I think it'll be up there. But then, yeah, in terms of Wet Paint and Botanical, I mean, I think Botanical could very well win this race. I mean, this horse has had drastic improvement in its last 2 races, but this just makes all the sense in the world for Wet Paint. I mean, you look at the races, and again, you're just adding more distance, which just gives Wet Paint more time to close up. You're making Botanical and Southlawn and anybody else that wants to go farther up have to hold off Wet Paint for more time, which is not what they want. They want that wire to be there as soon as possible. And Wet Paint would be happy to go around the track 4 times. Wet Paint wants that distance to last as long as possible. So I just think this entire situation is set up perfectly for Wet Paint. Obviously, it's a great horse as well. It's not like it's just that the situation helps this horse. This horse has shown that it can win in a variety of different ways. Obviously, coming from the back, but in terms of it doesn't need the race to be perfect for it. It's had to work hard to get there and get the job done. But it's also done it with room to spare. I think it'll do that again. I really do think Wet Paint will be tough to beat. The only way I really see it losing is just if Botanical gets enough of a jump and has enough left in the tank to hold off. But yeah, I think Wet Paint should win here.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, like we say this every race, but it all comes down to what happens up front. This race on paper shows to have lots of horses, especially from the outside, with Flying Connection and Pretty Mischievous, if I remember correctly. I'm going down right now. The 11 Darth Vader is the horse I was thinking of.
Yeah,
she has to go from the outside.
Darth Vader has to.
She has to clear if she wants any way to win this race. And this horse has shown the most improvement. And Jeffrey Wilson, I see what you're saying in the chat. But there's no one that has high buyers in this field. I think she runs a 93 and wins this race, going away by 1.5 at the finish line. That's what I see. I mean, Botanical has nice numbers, but they're 1 to 2 points higher. And Botanical, one, has never raced on dirt before, although I don't think it's going to be an issue with the Blame and Medagliadoro breeding. I don't think the dirt's going to be any issue for this horse, but this horse is going to have a lot of pace to deal with, although I don't think she's a need the lead type, which is why she's very dangerous in this spot. The horse is going to have to show that it can rate and hold off a horse like Wet Paint. That's my thinking on it. Although I do think Botanical is very dangerous in this spot, as we all have her in the mix. I have her in second, Patrick has her in third, and Charlie has second as well. I'm going to talk about Southlawn real quick, Patrick, and then I'll let you talk about your 11, because this horse is the other one for me that's really in contention, especially off that last race. Even though even though it looks a little slow on paper with the 86, the way this horse just went about her business in that Fairground Oaks makes me put a lot of confidence in this horse. You're not going to get 8 to 1 on this horse. I almost guarantee that. I think this horse is going to be more like 5 to 1. I think that's 6 to 1 absolute maximum in this race. She's going to sit a good trip, and to my point about Botanical, this horse is going to have to get first jump on wet paint, pass Botanical, and then have to hold off wet paint. It almost seems like it was a horse we were talking about that me and Howard were talking about before. Oh God, it's gonna elude me, but I don't know if she's good enough to pass a horse like Botanical and beat and hold off a horse like Wet Paint. That I think she's a must use on the win end, and then you're underneath, because if she does get to jump on Wet Paint, she's definitely very strong in this race. But like I said, she's going to have to improve off that 86 buyer if she wants to win. But Raylu's riding really well. Norm Cassie's had a great beginning to his year as well. So, and this horse is working lights out at Church.
Yeah, the works are ridiculous.
So I completely understand the love for South Lawn. Patrick, I want you to talk about the 11, because the 11 Defining Purpose, although looks slow on paper, she won the Ashland at 20-1, beating horses like Punch Bowl and Julius Shining, who are two very talented fillies. This horse is definitely not out of the question either.
Yeah, and that's my whole thing. Like, I don't think that that race was like, you're just gonna throw that race away and be like, Defining Purpose got away with this, At the end of the day, I really don't think she got away with much. I think she won the race fair and square at 20-1. So I'm gonna get odds that are probably a little lower than that. Tactical speed, Brian Hernandez Jr. could figure out what he wants to do. Kenny McPeak is that sneaky trainer in big races that has horses at longer prices that I've always liked, but have gotten beaten by a lot. Obviously, he's been working well. Had two nice works at Churchill on that dirt. So I'm going to take a shot here in a race where like we said, Wet Paint is probably going to be pretty heavily bet. But in a big race like this, you just don't know with a lot of horses.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This horse definitely, again, this is another horse that showed improvement in her last, and she's going to have to show it again, although she is working lights out at Churchill again. Kenny McPeak has her primed for this spot. You'll get a pretty decent price on her, most likely at 12-1 or higher. And I think, although judging from what Simon O'Neill said, the 11's 14, I read it as 4-1, excuse me. Simon said that the 11 is 14-1 in the UK. I think that's a great price to take on this horse. Although I think this horse might be a little bit buzzy, as they say, on the day, and maybe you'll get 9-10-1 on this horse, but definitely not out of the questions, especially underneath for sure. I want to talk about two horses. I'm going to talk about Pretty Mischievous on the outside, and I'll try and get your guys' word on it, but I want to talk about Promise America. Vashon Walsh, I know you, I've never seen your name before, so thank you so much for joining the show. I greatly appreciate it. I want to talk about Promise America, who won the Gazelle at Aqueduct in her last start, beating Gambling Girl. And actually, Gambling Girl is the other horse I want to talk about as well. 30-1 is probably a fair price for this horse. And this horse has run her best races or near the lead. She's going to have to work to get there. And is she going to be better than a horse like Botanical, who's going to be in the same position that she is, although the price is going to be a lot better. And if this horse continues to improve, she could definitely be there, but it's just a matter of, is she fast enough? And there's a reason I don't like Gambling Girl in this spot either. And it's for that same reason, which I will talk about. But Promise America is definitely interesting. And if she's a high price, I think it's definitely worth a look, in my opinion. The number 3, Gambling Girl, on the inside for Pletcher and Irad. Maybe you'll get 15-1 just based on her slow numbers, but I mean, it's Pletcher and Irad, so you never really know what type of price you're going to get on a horse like this. This horse closed into a slow pace last time, which Promiser America got the jump on her in the Gazelle. I just don't think this horse is fast enough, frankly. I think in a race like this, Gambling Girl is going to probably be right next to Wet Paint, near the back of the field going into the first turn. And coming down the stretch around the turn, based on what both of them have showed in their previous races, am I going to want a horse like Wet Paint coming down the stretch or Gambling Girl? And I get that the prices are going to be drastically different, which is why Gambling Girl might be a really good play underneath, especially if the pace heats up and falls apart. I just don't know, frankly, if she's good enough. And I don't know if you guys have anything to say on that, but she has raced against some decent. She's raced against Wet Paint before, lost by 4.5. Raced against Affirmative Lady, Promise for America, as I stated, Julia Shining, who's probably not going in to get into this race. She is, I believe, the second defection out. Patrick, I'm going to go to you. Do you guys? I know you're a big New York guy out there. Do you have anything to say about Gambling Girl?
Like with the Pletcher Rapoli horses, when there's talk about him, you got to pay attention to him. And listen, I could say this, and what, this could blow up in my face, whatever. But you just don't. We're not hearing much about Gambling Girl. People aren't bringing her up too much, and that's kind of a sign to me that just this horse isn't where Wet Paint is, let's say, and stuff like that, or Botanical. So I'm just not all there with Gambling Girl, but this horse could drastically improve and run her best race. That's how it goes.
Yeah, and look, this is what I want to show is this is the Honeybee at Oaklawn. Gambling Girl is the number 4 here, and Wet Paint is your number 7 horse right here in the Godolphin Blue. And as I skip ahead here, this is realistically how I think it's going to happen. Gambling Girl's a little bit ahead at Wet Paint at this point, but I mean, it's a full 12 horse field. Gambling Girl 6-1, Wet Paint is your 8-5 favorite in this spot. But this is realistically how I think it's going to go down in the Kentucky Oaks. And I get there's a lot better horses in the Oaks than in this spot here. But just the way that Wet Paint is able to drive, like from here, they're right next to each other. And I was watching this race actually with the boss himself. And we were like, if Wet Paint wins this race, she is absolutely going to be the deserving favorite. Because, I mean, she's 12 lengths back here at going around the first turn. And she on the inside, she's going to have to work out a trip. Gambling Girl is going to go in between horses here with Irad, who's already moving on the horse. Wet Paint's going to start coming up the rail here on the inside. And you can see, and a lot of times on these wetter days, you really don't want to be on the rail, as that's where a lot of the water gets draining. You can see Gambling Girl's on the outside here in the clear, just never really has the kick. Wet Paint's going to weave in between and just show the kick of why she's going to be the probably closer to 2-1 favorite in this race, if not lower. And you could see it crossing the finish line. She beats Gambling Girl by 4.5. And to my point earlier, I just don't know if I'm going to want a horse that's going to do the same thing as Wet Paint on the win end, at least. And who I think Wet Paint is just going to do it far better than Gambling Girl is. But underneath, I understand why people are using Gambling Girl. I think she's definitely worth a look underneath at the price she is going to be. And the last horse I'm going to talk about is Pretty Mischievous, all the way on the outside for Godolphin as well. Again, this is just another thing of this horse is going to want to be near the front. She drew all the way on the outside of the 14. There's going to be horses directly to her inside in Darth Vader, the 11, that are going to want to be towards the front. This was going to be caught wide. I understand it's a pretty long run to the first turn, but Tyler's going to have to work out a trip with this horse. And in the Rachel Alexandra, honestly, I think she's kind of just really had stuff all her way. And she beat Hoosier Philly, who was a 8-1 future bet in the Kentucky Derby at one point, which is just mind blowing to me. But hey, I mean, that people, I'm not going to sit here and harp on future bets because that's probably a losing fight no matter what. But she's definitely talented. Do not get me wrong, but all the way on the outside in a massive field with horses to her inside, they're going to want to be in the same position. I just don't know how good of a trip she's going to work out. And she's going to have to run to the low 90s at least to be able to win this race a little bit. And she frankly just got beat on the square by South Lawn last race. So I'm not sure if I'm going to want her over South Lawn, although their prices will be different, probably closer to double of Pretty Mischievous than South Lawn. But I don't know. I just don't think there's a lot of these horses that are going to be these middling prices. I just don't think they're going to be talented enough to win this race. I could be completely wrong. Of course, they're all very talented in their own right, but I'm going 7-6-4. Patrick's going 7-11-6, and Charlie is also going 7-6-4 in the Kentucky Oaks. Guys, we're switching to Sunday here. So now we jump from the Saturday. Kentucky Oaks. Thank you.
You're good. You're good. A lot of stuff going on. I just,
Yeah, we're moving all over the place. So I'm putting I'll have all 3 of those horses on my ticket, by the way. 7-6-4. I'm not sure if I need to go any deeper in that race, frankly, than the top 3 most logicals. I know it's not the most creative pick in the world, as a lot of my picks usually are, of course. But I personally don't think. I think those are the 3 horses to beat in the race. And, you're going to try and make these random cases for these horses. You get into trainer, get into really deep stats that may not matter on the day. They might just be a lot better. So it's just the way it goes. I'm going those 3. We're moving to Saturday, guys. Kentucky Derby Day. The 2-day pick 6 continues in race 4. This is the Derby City Distaff. We actually talked about this race yesterday for the middle pick or the Derby undercard stakes that we talked about in Tuesday's show. It is going 7 miles. Wow. 7 furlongs on the dirt for $750,000. The morning line favorite is the 2-year-old or the Breeders' Cup champion, Goodnight Olive, for Irad and Chad Brown at 4-5. Second choice is Wicked Halo, the number 3, for Tyler Gaffalione and Asmussen at 3-1. And Matarea on the outside for Flavian Pratt and Brad Cox. Guys, as we talked about this race yesterday, I don't want to spend too much time on it, especially as we're all going with Goodnight Olive in this spot. She looks really tough to beat, and she will be 4-5. I think she'll be even lower than that in this spot. I know Wicked Halo is going to take money. I'm not sure Matarea is going to take too much money, to be completely honest with you guys. I think she's going to be more like 5-1. I think you're going to see more like 3-1 or 3-5, 7-2, 5-1. I think that's what you're going to get in this spot. Charlie's the only person that has Matarea in this spot. Like I said, guys, we're going to go a little bit quicker here. As I switch to the PPs, Charlie, you're going first. Talk a little bit about Goodnight Olive, and then I want you to talk about Matarea.
This one for me, it's Goodnight Olive's race to lose. The horse has looked great, been very consistent, as we hit on last time. Again, you look at ever since its race on June 23rd of 2022, and it flipped the switch from an 87. Not that that's bad, and every race since has been in the high 90s and even in the hundreds. You got Irad and Chad Brown. Love the duo. The horse has been working out well. They continue to win together. This horse has been dominant. It's got 7 wins in 8 races, almost perfect. It hasn't taken a step wrong. There's nothing. It's nothing even against these horses. It's more that there's just no blemishes or anything in Goodnight Olive that I would say, oh, it's doing this wrong or that wrong. That worries me from a where it needs to be located perspective. Obviously, it's going to want to be towards the front, but it's shown it can go on the lead, or if there is more pace, which in this one, since it is higher quality, there will be more pace. It has no issue sitting right off those leaders and going by. I anticipate that's exactly what will happen. It'll get a very good stalking trip and then just go right by everybody. Maybe Irad takes a few waves to the fans since he's got enough of a lead to do so. Gives a little wink and is happy about his easy payday. And then, Goodnight Olive comes.
This is the clip you take out of context. When
this is the mush clip you take, and you just.
And then
we already covered the race. I had to say something exciting. The people that have been loyal enough to watch again, got to give them something to keep them paying attention.
What do you say about the Breeders' Cup champion? She looked great in Madison. Never really looked like a loser in that spot. And she comes back off of a 98, looks to be on the improve again. If she runs another low hundreds buyer in this spot, I don't think there's any single way that she loses in this spot. It would have to come up with something drastic for me to see Goodnight Olive now win in this spot. And maybe Wicked Halo just continues to progress and gets a trip on Goodnight Olive or something like that. But I really just don't see it in this spot. And I know we're not going very creative in this spot, but I don't think you really need to, personally. Charlie, talk about Matarea. I'm going to go over Wicked Halo real quick. She's definitely talented. She ran 3rd to Goodnight Olive in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, came back in the Oaklawn Park Matron, won, beating Matarea in a very hot pace. Never really looked like a loser too much in that spot either. But it just comes down to, is she as good as Goodnight Olive? I don't think so. Maybe the paired buyer tops coming off the layoff shows she's continuing to improve at 4, and maybe she is, but I just don't know if she's good enough to beat a horse like Goodnight Olive, who will probably run in the hundreds again. I don't think there's any more that really needs to be said. She's going to get the same trip as Goodnight Olive will, right behind the speed, but the main question obviously is she good enough? Charlie, go over Matarea real quick, and then Patrick, I'll let you talk about Hutch and Sultry, as I know you and I both like that horse, but you have a stronger opinion, and then we'll move on.
Look, Matarea has shown it has talent. Obviously, again, with Flavian Pratt and Brad Cox, good connections. Flavian's been on this horse for all its best efforts. I mean, the figures are respectable. By no means is this some weak horse. I mean, you see 91, 94, 93, 92. It has good figures, but like you kind of mentioned, the reality is, and I mean, I don't think honestly that I don't think Goodnight Olive is going to need more than like a 97, 98, 99, 100 to win this race. I mean, at least none of these horses have shown that they could even get to that. So that's why I really don't think that Goodnight Olive has a chance of losing. But yeah, if you're looking for a horse underneath to find, I do think, as you mentioned, that you'll probably get a decent price on the 5. It probably will be the third choice. I mean, who knows? Maybe even if enough money comes in on the 1, maybe like a co-third choice. It's ran some respectable races. And yeah, I mean, honestly, in this kind of spot, you're just kind of looking for who you think could maybe cause trouble in any way. And I do think this horse does have enough potential early speed while also not fading that it could cause some damage. I mean, it has similar, at least from the time form perspective, similar and buyers, similar figures to Wicked Halo. And I mean, they've each gotten the better of each other a few different times. But yeah, I mean, like I said, you're kind of just at this point. I like the connections. I feel like Brad Cox is going to have a very successful day. So that's kind of how I ended up giving the edge to the 5. I mean, also it's obviously showed plenty of talent. But yeah, I really just don't see Goodnight Olive losing. It's kind of, you're just nitpicking, trying to figure out who's going to finish after it. And the 5 was just a horse where I was willing to take a chance. Try to be a little different.
Yeah, I don't think she'll be second choice based on that last race at Oaklawn. I think Wicked Halo will be maybe not clear second choice, but definitely by at least a point. But she's definitely talented. I think her best races are when she has it her own way on the lead. On the lead. I don't know. I mean, this horse definitely doesn't mind the 7 furlongs or the mile. She showed it at Belmont last year in the Acorn. Although we talked about it yesterday, and Patrick, I keep bringing it up, but that's when Echo Zulu scratched in that race in the Acorn. That threw everything all into whack, where I know me and you both had her singled that day. I frankly just don't think she's good enough. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she can show the improve off that last race. But I've never had too much faith in this horse, frankly. And I frankly don't think she's good enough to beat a horse like Goodnight Oliver, maybe not even Wicked Halo. But that's, again, my opinion. You can nitpick and try and find and poke holes in Goodnight Olive. I don't think she'll have any problem with the 7 furlongs that she showed in the past. All her wins look like she's just driving to the wire, and she's going to sit an amazing trip in this race. Patrick, I know you like Hot and Sultry. Putting it to you, sir. What do you like about this horse underneath?
Yeah, I just really like the cutback in distance for this horse. I feel like she, had 2 performances where she's performed well just against greater competition in Secret Oath and Clairiere. Going to be on or near the lead if I had to guess. And I'm really hoping to get this horse up in the exactas and in a try. I'm going to try and do a 2 with a 1-3 with 1-3 try, and take Matarea out of it because I really do think Hot and Sultry can hit the board.
Well, I mean, there's your value, right? Is if you're looking for a value in a race like this, it's either you really have to take it in doubles, which, as we talked about yesterday, there's going to be a big favorite in the next race as well. I think the only way you create value in a race like this, where there's going to be a 2 to 5 shot that looks like to me, like there's not many scenarios where she can lose. It's either you take a horse like Hot and Sultry underneath and throw Matarea out of it and Wicked Halo. So you take the 4th choice and you create value that way, or you pair Goodnight Olive with horses that you like next race if you don't like the heavy favorite. And there's obviously many other ways to go about it. I know people, they dabble in trifectas, like you said, Patrick, and superfectas and stuff like that. But I just never like to take on too much risk like that. I've never been a fan of the trifecta or superfecta bet. Although on days like Derby Day, where the pools are so large, you're going to get value no matter what, really. So keep that in mind as well, especially in the later races towards the Kentucky Derby. But I'm going to look to play something like an exacta, like Patrick's saying, with Hot and Sultry underneath, or a double Goodnight Olive into a horse or 2 next race that are going to be middling prices to where I can create a little bit of value with this horse. But I'm going 2-3-1. So is Patrick, and Charlie is throwing 2-5-3 in the mix for this race. And like I said, guys, just going a little bit quick here, as we did touch on to this race yesterday. If you want the detailed dive deep for this race and the 3 others after it, please watch yesterday's episode of Bettin N Boozin going over the Derby undercard stakes. Guys, the next race, we jump all the way to race number 9. It is the Churchill Downs Stakes for going 7 furlongs on the dirt with the return of a very, very special horse. I'm sure many of you know him, love him, and love the story behind the horse. It is Cody's Wish, and let's see. And look at this, guys. We're all just losers, realistically. That's what it comes down to, because we're all going with the great story off the layoff. I have the one. We all have the one in second, actually, which
wait, is this race 9 or 10, by the way? Sorry, I just want to make sure.
Number 9.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yep, it is. We both have the one who it's been a very hot debate over the past few days, and I'm on the side of the guys that talked about it earlier. If you watched the earlier podcast, I think I don't know. We'll talk about it as it comes on. I have the 6 and 3rd. Patrick has the 2 and 3rd, and Charlie has the 10 and 3rd. So we're all different underneath. I want to give a quick shout out to Christine Race. Feels like a boxing match. Surely is the big leagues of handicapping. Absolutely. And obviously, Christine, all we're doing is hammering it hard this week with all the different podcasts. So Christine, one of our longest supporters, thanks so much for joining the show. And the boss steps in and says, now this is a chalk we can all get behind. And I know Howard and I were not on him in the Breeders' Cup, but I could tell you what, I know Howard said this as well. I was never less upset about losing a race than in that race in the Breeders' Cup. And not to mention that kicked off one of our good friends, Drew Codeney's run to the Breeders' Cup, but the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge Championship. But guys, I'm switching over right now. Patrick, you're going to go first. What puts Cody's Wish into such a good spot here where he's going to be 4-5 and most likely win this race?
I mean, the buyer speed figure alone tells you what you need to know, but you dig into the race a little bit more and you look at the pace. I just think Cody's Wish is going to thrive off of different speed in this race, especially coming from the inside, where Cody's going to be able to just sit back and make a move, and even if Cody has to, just stay, maybe towards the front of the pace and just, make sure to pounce at the right time. But I mean, this horse has just been tremendous, has defied my eyes. I could tell you that much. I mean, I had Jackie's Warrior in that forego.
Yep,
And it was, that was at Saratoga. And then obviously in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, like you said, I had Cyberknife, so this horse is the good. This horse is the goods. And I will not be going against Cody on Saturday.
No, and look, I mean, you can just basing it off of, obviously we all know who Cody is. We all know the story behind it. And if you don't, go watch something, because my God, is an unbelievable story. But his numbers just stick out in this race, realistically. I know he's coming off a long layoff under Bill Mott's care. He most likely handpicked this spot for Cody's Wish, going back to 7 furlongs after running a mile last time. I think 7 furlongs is really where this horse thrives, as he showed in the forego, beating Jackie's Warrior. I mean, everything just looks like it sets up, not to mention that this is another race where on paper looks like there's plenty of speed to set up for a horse like this. And I'm going to let Charlie talk about White Abario, who we all have in second. I know there's been a lot of talk about Saffie Joseph over these past few days. We're going to bypass it for now. We're just going to base what's on paper, but I completely understand everyone was talking about it earlier in the chat, but we're just not going to get into it on this handicapping show. But Charlie, White Abario, this is a horse that so many people have been completely against at all points. Comes back at Gulfstream, basically his playground in the last, and just wipes the field, basically. I mean, he beat good horses in that race. As I can bring up the chart here, and I'll make it full screen for everybody to see. I mean, he beat Weyburn and Collaborate, who both came back. Weyburn came back and won the Sir Shackleton at Gulfstream Park with a 96 buyer, and Collaborate came back and won an allowance race beforehand and raced in the Sir Shackleton. Didn't exactly run very well, but came back with a 95 buyer in his next race. I mean, just a very live race with very good horses in it. Of a 103 buyer, newly turned 4-year-old, of course, for White Abario, but it just seems like this horse is on the improve, and I think Safi put him where he's going to thrive best on the one turn.
I mean, look, I had to put White Barrio second, like no matter what. What for me, it wasn't even whether it deserved it or not. It was simply that I've been on this horse's bandwagon all the way back to the Florida Derby. I picked this horse to win. I'm not saying it was some crazy upset by any means, but yeah, I picked this horse. I bet the horse, so I've been sticking with it since. It has hurt me a lot in the past. Sprinkled a little bit on it on the Kentucky Derby. Obviously, that was a disaster. But yeah, it looked like the horse started to get back in form. Then obviously, I mean, granted, it was a very tough race with the Pegasus World Cup, but rebounded very nicely, as you mentioned, off that, like, not layoff by any means. It's like that little refresher that it had in that 7 furlong race. I like this distance as well for this horse. I really like the early speed. That's what really got me excited, is simply because, Cody's Wish is going to be flying late. And kind of just like we were talking about in other races, where you're like with Wet Paint, where the way you need to beat Cody's Wish, I don't think anyone will, but the only way you can is you need to get the early jump. That's just your only hope. You need a horse that's either going to be on the lead or just off. In my opinion, just off would be best, which is White Barrio. I think White Barrio will be the one to get the first jump after that early speed, those early speed horses. I mean, it's working really well as well. Again, I don't see it winning, but the 103 certainly is a positive for you. I do like White Barrio a lot in this spot. Think it will be a solid, dangerous horse. Don't know what kind of odds necessarily get on it, but for me, I would play it in my exactas and trifectas underneath Cody's Wish. But yeah, I have a lot of faith in this horse. And again, I am biased because after I picked it right and then it hurt me in the past, I try to stick with my horses that I backed in the past.
Yeah, and look, there's one specific angle right at the wire, who's a very astute viewer, and he's watched the show for a while. Thanks so much for joining the show, man, and I appreciate the compliment earlier. I know he doesn't look on paper that he matches up class-wise. The only thing that I'm looking for on White Barrio is I love that he's turning back in distance again. A lot of his class races have been at 1 1/8, and he's run a decent. And I know he's running outside of Florida. I know that's a very big point to make. He's newly turned 4. He's newly turned 4. First race out, I know, is at Gulfstream, but he gets 103 buyer off the rip. I think he sits a really nice trip in this spot, right behind the leaders. I don't necessarily think he needs to show all of his early speed, although he is on the rail. He tips out at the top of the stretch. Maybe he's not as good to hold off Cody's Wish, which I don't think he is, but I just think he gets the jump, sits a really nice trip. And like I said, the whole thing judges on that he's newly turned 4. Maybe he's back on the improve again, back where he wants to be, going around one turn, where he's only raced 4 times around one turn. It was in his maiden race at Gulfstream, and an optional claiming 75 at Gulfstream, at Aqueduct in the Cigar Mile, where he lost to Mind Control and Get Her Number by a half length, and wiped the field in that optional claimer at Gulfstream. That's just my opinion. I think he's much better around one turn, sits a good trip, and maybe blows by everyone else, but then Cody's Wish nips him at the end. I'm going there. I could be wrong. Like I said, Safi could just be horrible outside of Florida like he always is, but I'm willing to take a shot with newly turned 4-year-old. Now we have to go through the field because now we have everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have the number 6. I'll talk first, and then I'll let everyone go because I've been talking a lot. Tejano Twist for Hartman and Landeros ran really well in the Whitmore at Oaklawn. Comes back a month later. Doesn't
killed us
on the show.
Killed us in that race.
I know. I said this on the show. I love Tejano Twist in that spot.
Oh yeah, you did.
And then he just doesn't run. I mean, like, he ran enough. He ran his race, and maybe he just wasn't enough for the other 2 horses. Skelly got the jump in that race, but they went super fast, and I thought he was just going to blow by everyone. And actually, frankly, I didn't even watch the race. And I went back, saw the fractions, because I like to look at all the information before I look at the winners. I was like, oh, wow, okay, well, surely. And no, he ran 3rd. But again, this is just another race where I think he sits a good trip. There's a lot of speed in front of him. The speed dies out. This horse can be one to pick up the pieces. And if you're going to get this horse at 7 or 8 to 1, I mean, it's a good price to take a shot, especially underneath in your exactas or tries. Patrick, I'm letting you talk next. CZ Rocket. This is a horse that I have a love-hate relationship with, and I've always had. The Santa Anita Sprint Championship still haunts me to this day. I had him in the tournament to jet myself up to a position to where I wanted to be, and got literally nosed out by probably like that much. I swear to God, look at the photo. But you're going with CZ Rocket underneath.
Yeah, this 9-year-old beauty coming back from Medan, actually, which is, crazy to think. Listen, I'm gonna take a shot with CZ Rocket. I'm thinking he's gonna be on his game. He's been firing some bullet works. Trainer Peter Miller, he's been there, done that. So he's a solid trainer. I really don't tactical speed, but I really don't know, where CZ's going to want to be and what Flavian's going to do. I just have like for a horse like this, I have a little knack, just a 9-year-old, like a good story type of thing. So I'm going to take a shot with CZ Rocket underneath.
I mean, look, he's a great horse, and he's been for a long time. I mean, like you touched on, he's 9 years old. He's ran 37 times. He's almost made. He did. It's good. I love that Penn State Scott. That's a good one. He just said he's collecting Medicare at this point, but I mean, he's almost made $2 million. I think, to your point, Patrick, I think he's going to want to sit middle pack, and I just don't think he's good enough at this point to run with horses like Cody's Wish. But again, this is another horse that's going to be over that 10-1 mark that could be a key underneath. Do I think there's better? In my opinion, yes. But this is one of those horses that you can definitely look at to use in that spot. And Charlie, you are going with the number 10. Close it out for us here. Unless anyone in the chat has any horses that we want to talk about before we move on. The number 10 Endorsed, who I could not decide what to do with because he's ultra talented for Maker and Gaffleone. And it was between Tejano Twist and Endorsed. I would definitely have them 3-4. You can interchange them for sure. What do you like about Endorsed?
Yeah, I love a lot about Endorsed. I think this is a very underrated horse that could make a lot of noise in this race. I mean, it's working well. Love the connections with Michael Maker and Tyler Gaffleone. I mean, you look, again, the figures are actually very impressive on this horse. After it came off that break, you see with the 90, 95, 96, and then a 101 last time out. I don't think the distance will be a problem. Another thing I really like about this horse, as you kind of see with the time for ratings, is it has a strong early and late pace. So for Endorsed, this horse really can be anywhere. Again, I kind of think it'll go with a similar approach to White Abarrio, where it'll sit off the pace. But the one thing I do like almost a little bit more than, I guess, White Abarrio, but I ended up just putting White Abarrio over Endorsed anyway, is the fact that I do have a little more faith in this horse to be able to have enough kick at the end, because obviously it's been able to do what White Abarrio has been able to do, but at farther distances. But yeah, I mean, it's shown it could do it at 7 furlongs or a mile, which again, I just like, because again, for me, that to me tells me that Endorsed might have more in the tank than White Abarrio. I can very well see a scenario where these two go neck and neck together, and then you kind of just wait to see if Cody's Wish passes those two. But yeah, I think Endorsed is very dangerous in this spot. Again, I think Cody's Wish is too tough to beat. But if you're looking, again, for a horse, I mean, I know I'm not picking some long shots, but if you're looking for a horse nonetheless that'll pay decently in your exactas and trifectas, I feel like you have to have Endorsed somewhere. The horse is just too talented.
I agree with you completely. And like I said, I could not, frankly, I wanted to add Tejano Twist in there to pick up pieces, but Endorsed is absolutely ultra talented. I think he even has a shot to win this race, as he's going to sit the trip that's going to beat Cody's Wish, he's going to sit mid-pack, get the jump on Cody's Wish. And I think that's the only way he loses, frankly, in this spot, because Endorsed has been improving every race this year since his race on Breeders' Cup Day, which was that optional claiming 100,000 for back, losing to Nakatomi, who is a great horse in his own right. If he improves to 104 here, and maybe Cody's Wish is just not that ready off the bench, Endorsed is definitely a win candidate for sure. And I'm going to go through the chat real quick. We're going to go over a few horses. Rob N says, get her numbers kind of interesting. I've fallen out of love with this horse. I played this horse in not the Bing Crosby. It was at the optional claiming 100K here, to beat Ginobili off when Ginobili was off the layoff. I don't know if he's as good enough to face these horses over here. He ran in the Pegasus World Cup, ran horribly, although I don't think that's what this horse is suited for, going that type of distance. Cuts back to 7 furlongs at Santa Anita. Doesn't really, though, closes into a cold pace, but not really that good. That's with Forbidden Kingdom, who gave up that cold pace, by the way. And then it goes to Keeneland for the Commonwealth at 7 furlongs. Again, closes into a slow pace. This is another horse. I feel like there's a lot of these horses in this race where they're going to be that 10 to 15 to 1 range that could definitely fill out your exactas and trifectas. This is one of those horses to keep in mind for sure. I agree with you, Rob Ben, for everything I just said. I think this horse is much better at 7. A lot of cold paces this horse is closed into, which to me shows that this horse has a lot of ability. It's just a matter of, can Joel get to that point where he can have a lot of run on the outside and maybe not last with Cody's Wish, but be able to pick up a little bit of pieces on the back end. So, Rob Ben, I think this horse is definitely one to keep an eye out for. I'm going 7-1-6. Patrick is going 7-1-2, and Charlie's going 7-1-10. Guys, the next race is the Turf Classic, for going 1.1 miles on the turf, a grade 1 for $1 million. And for anyone that got that reference, that's one for you guys. But
you gotta say it.
You gotta with the pinky,
yeah.
Of course. That might give it away what it is. But this is a full field of 10 going 1.1 miles, as I said, on the turf for $1 million. It's very soft morning line favorite is the number 7 Hong Kong Harry, a West Coast turf horse for Phil D'Amato and Flavian Pratt at 7-2. Second choice is Up to the Mark for Irad Ortiz and Todd Pletcher. Third choice going to the number 8 Santine with Tyler Gaffleone and Brendan Walsh. And as I switch the picks over here, I'm the odd man out, but I am going with the chalk Hong Kong Harry. But the two others are going with Up to the Mark, who I was debating not even putting anywhere. So we definitely have differing opinions on this race. Charlie, I'll let you talk about the number 5 Up to the Mark and why you think that he has a good chance to win this race.
I love everything about Up to the Mark. I remember I think we covered Up to the Mark for March 4th. I believe we covered it on the show. And man, I mean, this horse, I mean, obviously, you have Irad with Todd. Obviously, whenever you see Pletcher and Irad Ortiz together, that's obviously a great sign. But man, the reason why I really like this horse and chosen in this race is I don't think the distance will be a problem. And man, does this horse fly. I mean, in the race where it won on March 4th, it did not get a good trip. It ran in traffic. It was trying to weave. And then once it finally just got a glimpse of daylight to take off, I mean, the horse shot out like a cannon and just flew. I really do. I understand why there is a soft favorite. For me, I do think this is a fairly open race. I don't think there is some clear cut. It has to be this horse. But yeah, Up to the Mark. I mean, it's been running. If you look at its last 3 races, obviously took a huge step forward once we entered 2023. The horses looked great in all of its efforts. Again, I think Irad knows what he's doing with Up to the Mark. I know it won't necessarily be the favorite, but I love that it has enough early speed and strong late. And the other thing is, I honestly just don't like the favorite at all. I mean, there's a reason I don't have the 7 anywhere. It did nothing for me. I don't have it anywhere for me. So, but I'm curious for why. I mean, I guess because it's chalk, so that's maybe why the 7 appealed to you. So I'm curious to hear why. But yeah, no, I love everything about Up to the Mark, and the 7 just did nothing for me.
I can definitely explain why. Patrick, do you have anything to add Up to the Mark before I go on my rant?
Just a little bit, and then I'll let you go. I'll let you get a little more fired up for the couple minutes. No, I'm kidding. No, listen, Up to the Mark is drastically improving race to race, and I get, came in 3rd in the Maker's Mark Mile to Ches Pierre, who ran off the charts that day and against Modern Games too. The horse Up to the Mark should be about the same odds as the Maker's Mark Mile. I just tactical speed again, like I said, and Pletcher with these horses that start on the dirt and go to the turf, or vice versa. I was, when I was handicapping this morning, you might be able to help me out. There was a horse, a 2-year-old for Pletcher, that he just couldn't get right on the dirt and sent the horse to the turf and just went drastically off. And this is what I'm starting to think with Up to the Mark. And I think this horse is going to just show up on Saturday and win big.
Yeah, and definitely could. There's 2 things that I want to touch on with Up to the Mark before I move on to my pick. This horse is coming back really quick as well. He's never come back this quick before. He's coming back off of basically 3 weeks rest. So he ran in the Maker's Mark Mile with Shea Pierre in Modern Games, that whole fiasco that went down where they just let Flavian Pratt go to the lead and wave to him goodbye. But I mean, running a neck to Modern Games is nothing just nothing to shake your head about at all. But I don't know necessarily if this horse wants all this distance. I think this horse is also going to be a lot farther back than people think in this spot. If you look back to his 2 Gulfstream races, he was way in the back of the pack and closed like an absolute freight train. I just don't know if there's that much speed to have this race. If you look in the middle there's these red numbers indicate these red Timeform US pace figures indicate a hot pace towards the middle. You could see that it went from 47-2 to 110-3 to, and then the first quarter at that Gulfstream on that Gulfstream turf was 22-1, which is another really quick pace. I think this horse is just a beneficiary. And last race, I get it didn't have a whole lot of pace to run into. His shape here just ran away. But I just think that I don't know if this horse is going to be ready off the quick turnaround and if this horse is going to have the juice to be able to get up. And I say juice figuratively, don't everyone come for me. But if she's going to have the energy to come and run by everybody after coming from, third to second to last. So that's just for me to up to the mark. But this is definitely a win candidate for sure. I went with Hong Kong Harry on top. And there's many reasons why I know that people are going to come at me again and say this horse is also just a beneficiary, but I think this horse is extremely talented. The numbers show, and I know I'm also one that's usually against horses coming over from the West Coast to East Coast for turf racing. I think the Churchill turf, the new turf they put in, is going to be actually pretty similar, although not as rock hard, as there is also going to be a lot of rain, or not a lot of rain, but some rain coming their way, which is definitely going to have to change my opinion if it does come raining. So everyone keep an eye on the weather. But this horse, I think, wants every bit of the 1.8 miles. I think this horse needed one last time, was put into a really tough race. Just never really had that closing kick that he's always had in his previous races. I think second off the layoff. And the other thing that's big for me on D'Amato is intent. If you look at D'Amato's meet at Keeneland, he didn't bring many horses over, but the horses he brought over were damn good. And did they fire? I mean, some of them were off layoffs. It didn't matter. I think D'Amato won at over a 40% clip. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the intent here for me is crazy. He could have chose a lot of races on the West Coast for Hong Kong Harry, but instead chooses to throw him into the wolves on Derby Day in a grade 1. I think this horse is definitely live in this spot. Second off the layoff. I think he's going to get a really good run, sit middle of the pack, and if I get 7-2, that is going to be a good enough price for me to fire on this horse. And you guys have the number 4 actually in second, and Steady On is a horse that I don't know if I have enough faith in to put in a spot like this. And then we're going to go pretty quick, guys, because I want to get to the Derby. We are running a little bit over time. So, Patrick, I'm giving it to you. What do you like most about Steady On?
Yeah, listen, with Steady On, this horse is going to be forwardly placed, stretching back out in distance. I just think that the distance might actually benefit this horse in a way. Could do many different things, and the horse is trending upward. Like I said, up to the mark's trending upward. This horse is trending upward, both for the same stable. Listen, I think this horse has a chance just based on being forwardly placed, and hopefully can take him as far as possible. And if not, up to the mark will come closing.
I completely agree with you, honestly, on this. I meant to take that comment off the screen. Sorry, my computer just bugged out for me real quick, and I'm not even on the right horse. I don't know what the hell just happened. My apologies, guys. But
All good.
I think this horse, realistically, for me, it does have 2 back-to-back big numbers. I'm not sure realistically who this horse beat in his last 2, and especially since this horse is going to be that 5-1 price, I don't know if I can trust. I think this horse has had the races his way every single time this year, at least, if not going back to a race like the Giaponti at Aqueduct even, and just really has not got the job done last race, but was able to sit back a little bit at a much easier spot than this and close into a quick pace. This horse is going to take money. I'm not sure this horse is as talented as others in the field, And at a price like 4-1, that's a horse I'm willing to get beat by, even if it is Jose and Pletcher. But there is one horse I also want to talk about that I don't have. Let me touch quick on Wolfie's Dynaghost, and then I'll let you touch on the 9, Charlie. Or Charlie. Yeah, Charlie. I was right the first time. Wolfie's Dynaghost ran massive at Turfway Park. Do not get me wrong. And I know this horse looks prime on synthetic, but this horse has back numbers for the turf, ran 96s at Belmont and Saratoga last year, even losing by 4 1/4 to horses like City Man and Atone, who we both know are really top horses at the top of their game. I think Wolfie's Dynaghost is the speed of the speed in this race. I'm not sure there's that much as previous races that we've talked about. I think he's willing to sit towards the top and maybe not get clear, but get clear enough to have a clear run coming to the top of the stretch. Maybe he's not as good to hold off horses underneath, but I think this horse is definitely a use, especially at that 10-1 price, or maybe even more, judging by how much money some of these or other horses are going to take that we've already touched on. But Wolfie's Dynaghost, I think, is extremely interesting, especially at that price. Charlie, take it away. Why do you like the number 9, Spooky Channel, the 8-year-old who's 13 for 28 and ran massive last time at Fairgrounds?
Yeah, so real quick, I did just want to say briefly about the 4. I mean, I think the fact that IRAD didn't choose to go on the 4 speaks a little bit of volume. I think, though, I do like its early speed. I think it could be a scenario where Pletcher kind of tries to use it to sit off the pace, but bring up enough pace to maybe try to help the 5 up to the mark out with getting another more pace. Again, I think, as you mentioned with the 3, and even the horse Howard mentioned, the horse that Tyler Gaffleone's on, there is some horses with some good early speed. But yeah, back to Spooky Channel. Yeah, I mean, obviously it isn't the youngest horse in the field by any means, but yeah, I mean, the figures have been consistent. They've been great. I mean, 96, 94, 100. It ran really well last time out. I don't think the distance will be a problem. Again, I think this is another one that has enough early speed to be close enough that it's not too far behind, and obviously has more than enough speed to be running and doing its best work late. That's really all I'd say about the 9. I think it's more of an underneath play. I do also like that, it's kind of been able to deal with different paces. It obviously has had some hot paces to benefit from, but even when the pace has been realistic, it's gotten the job done. And then I saw someone in the chat mention Bye Bye Melvin, which is a horse that I like as well. I know its last effort, obviously coming off a big layoff, its last effort wasn't great, but I do think if it could run back to its 2 prior efforts before that, or even 3 prior, any of those efforts could be something where this could be a horse at a decent price that could, again, make some noise. Certainly this could be one that's more farther up and, trying to set the pace, and it does have to come across from the outside, but I think that's another horse. I think this race is pretty open. There's a lot of legitimate candidates in this field.
Yeah, and I mean, this is why it shakes up to, of course, be the race right before the Derby. When you're trying to throw doubles into the Derby, you're going to get good prices no matter what, because obviously the Derby is also very wide open this year. They don't really necessarily have too many standouts, and we're going to get to that obviously right now. But Bye Bye Melvin's just going to be part of that pace scenario. I'm not sure he's as good as a horse like Wolfie's Dynaghost, especially coming off of the more recent starts. This horse is going to have to come from the outside, especially with Spooky Channel's not going to want to be there. Santine's going to want to be a little bit forwardly placed. And there's one other horse, Steady On's the other horse I'm thinking of. Just a lot of speed to deal with to his inside, excuse me. But if he's ready off the layoff, definitely interesting, but not at a price of 6-1 for me. Santine's the last horse I want to talk about. And I know the boss was giving us crap for not having this horse on top, or not on top, but in the mix. This horse he's extremely talented. The last race you can throw out on synthetic, I don't think you have to worry about that last race at all. Especially since Wolfie's Dynaghost went to the top and stayed there. This horse has back numbers for the turf, loves Churchill Downs, ran at the race that will not be named because it does not belong at Churchill Downs, but ran well in the Turf Classic, ran well in the Manhattan, obviously the defending Turf Classic champion from last year. I don't want to say he's not the same horse as he was last year, because those newly turned 5-year-old this year, he's definitely worth. I don't know if he's going to be worth it at a price like 4-1 for me. Brendan Walsh is extremely hot. He had a great Keeneland meet, but if he's going to be more forwardly placed, that's what creates more interest for me in him. He's going to be on my underneath tickets if I do play any in this race, but I just don't know if he's going to be the same horse as he was last year and going to be fired up enough to be able to fire a winning effort in a race like this with horses like Hong Kong Harry trying to run him down. But he will get first jump. He's extremely interesting. The connections you can't go wrong with. Tyler rides great at Churchill Downs, as we all know. But I'm willing to take a shot on a low price that really has not shown anything since the last year at Churchill Downs. Could he win? Absolutely. Will I be using him? Yes. On the win end? I don't think so, but is definitely a win candidate for sure. But guys, I'm going to put us full screen here, as this is the time everyone has been waiting for, of course, because who else would you go to for the Kentucky Derby than Bettin N Boozin? You have everything right here that you could ever want. Patrick, you are going first. I'm going to bring up the Equibase right now before you give your picks, and then we'll go over PPs. But it's the biggest race of the year. Course going 1.25 miles on the dirt at Churchill Downs for $3 million. Full field of 20. As always, you know him, you love him. The morning line favorite is the number 15, Forte, for Irad and Pletcher at 3-1. Tapit Trice on the inside is the second choice at 5-1. And the third choice is the 14, Angel of Empire. So my question to the chat before I bring our picks up on the screen, how many of us do you think went with Forte? Is it 1, 2, or 3? Because I will tell you, at least one of us has Forte on top. So I want to hear from the chat. I'm going to give it a sec before we go over everyone's picks. And we're doing it like Howard's podcast. We're going to have the top 4 go for the Derby. So Charlie, if you want, text me in the chat to give me a 4th horse for your picks to go into the number 4 slot, because obviously the normal thing is to send 3, but I want to see, there is one right at the wire. I'll give you that. But how many people have Forte on top? And I see right at the wire said, but Vashon said 1. The boss says 2. Simon says just Charlie has Forte on top. And I'm letting Patrick go first. And this is your shining moment, Patrick. You better be ready to give your pick, because look, Patrick has Forte on top, going the 2-year-old champion. He is going 15, Tapit Trice, the number 10, Practical Move, and the number 4, Confidence Game in 4th. Patrick, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, listen, the Kentucky Derby is, Steve Asmussen said it best. I forgot when he said it. This isn't a horse race. This is an event. This race is just incredible. You need to get lucky, to be honest. And at the end of the day, I just think Forte is the best horse in the field. And I just feel like it's destined to win this race. Like, we've been talking about Forte, rightfully so, all the time. We look at the PPs. Has won the last 6 races, has won convincingly and in different fashions, won the Florida Derby when the horse did not have to win the Florida Derby whatsoever. Irad Atiz aboard. This is I just feel like this horse does nothing wrong. And the only knock that I would have is the horse has never raced on this track. And a lot of horses could say that. So I just think this is the horse is the one to beat. And I couldn't really pick out a longer shot that I believed was worthy of winning the Kentucky Derby. Now, you see I have the 5, Tapit Trice, who is a bit of a homer pick, sure, for the boss, but as talented as all hell. And if that horse can clear out in space coming down the stretch, that horse has a big shot. The 10, Practical Move, another talented horse who's thrown up 100 buyers for Tim Yakteen. But, Tim Yakteen comes out of California and he's a mess. But I love the talent there. And then the 4, Confidence Game, who I know Kyle does not like. But I can't get away from that Rebel win. That Rebel win was really impressive to me. Has a speed of the speed's going to get it's going to have to go from that early post. And listen, you know what? Why not take a shot with a deep long shot horse underneath.
Yeah, and look, I'll never talk you off of a 20-1 shot. I'll never do it. I'll never do it to anybody. But I just don't know how Confidence Game stacks up. If he gets the pace and gets the setup, this horse can definitely win. But to your point about Forte, I mean, there's really not much to talk about. He's the 2-year-old champion. Realistically, I'm gonna give you this question. All the people are saying about Forte is, the decreasing buyers for his 3-year-old year and the value. Will there be any value playing this horse vertically with people like Mattress Mac putting multiple millions of dollars on this horse to win, as he did last year with Epicenter? And does the decreasing buyers scare you at all?
No, to be honest, it doesn't. I think a 3-digit buyer wins this race. And to answer like the second part of your question, it wasn't really a question, but you look at Epicenter last year. Epicenter went off, I believe, at 2-1. I had the horse winning the Kentucky Derby. That horse was right there. We all know what happened. I'm not saying that's going to be the same thing. It's probably going to be a completely different race of how it goes. But I just think at the end of the day, if you think a horse, and I get the odds from a betting perspective and all that, I get it. But if you think the horse in Forte is the best horse in the field, which I do, I'm going to put the horse on top. Now, I'm going to figure out ways to, make some money, through different bets. But I just think Forte is the best horse in the field.
And look, I mean, you can easily argue that he is the most talented horse in this field. He's the 2-year-old champion. He's done absolutely nothing wrong in his last 5 starts. I mean, he's the horse to beat. He's a deserving favorite. But obviously, from a betting standpoint, as I said, if the value's there, you guys should set your own value lines. If the horse is below the value line, where can you create value with him? And for me, for the way he's run this year, like I said, he's done nothing wrong, but he's done nothing to impress me. I'm willing to look elsewhere to have value. And obviously that gives away my pick. It is not Forte in this year's Kentucky Derby. But Charlie, you are up next, my friend. And as I put us all on screen again, there's a few people that said 1. There's a few people that said 2. Is the boss right? The boss is right. Charlie is also going with the 2-year-old champion, and I forgot to put his other horse in there, which is the number 6. Charlie is going the number 15, Forte on top, number 14, Angel of Empire second, the number 8, Mage in third, which that'll be an interesting one, and the number 6, Kingsbarns in fourth. Charlie, I know we talked a lot about Forte. Feel free to add anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to touch on, and then go through your picks.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched the Fountain of Youth, that's what really sold me on Forte for sure. I mean, I know it wasn't the strongest field in the world. I know it also wasn't its best race day from a figures perspective. But the way I just saw that horse pick up, I mean, obviously the Florida Derby also made me feel better because it did kind of look like, oh no, it was running out of time. And a horse I can't wait to touch on, Maze, might have just had the upset and had it beat. But yeah, Forte, it's showed it can face the adversity. It showed it can deal with different types of pace. It's a versatile horse. It can sit on the back, but it has enough pace to close up. I mean, again, Pletcher and Irad, we've talked about this whole show, how much I love that duo together and how dangerous I think they are. Again, for me, I can't really find any holes with Forte. I don't think it's some unbeatable horse by any means. I don't think this is some American Pharaoh Justify kind of horse where I can't envision a scenario. It's simply, at the end of the day, when you're making these picks, it's about who is the most likely winner in your eyes. Forget the odds, forget value, forget the best price. It's simply who do you think has the best chance to win a race where anybody has a chance if we learned anything from last year. And that was Forte for me. In terms of moving on, yeah, I knew if I went with the chalk early on, it's not likely to be a chalk eating weasel. So I knew I could not just start putting the other top horses after, which is why, while I will get to later on when we break down our tickets, I don't trust me, everyone. I still have the 5 and 10 somewhere, but I wanted to be different. I wanted to show some faith in the other horses. Angel of Empire's last race in the Arkansas Derby was incredible to me. I loved what I saw. Again, I think Flavian Pratt and Brad Cox, I love that duo. I do think Angel of Empire is a very, very legit threat to win this race. I don't think you're getting 8-1. I would love 8-1 on this horse, but I do think this is the second best horse in this field. I love the steady improvement I'm seeing. I think it will take another step forward. I think its style is very good. I think what's interesting also is its figures and style is very similar to that of Forte, and they're right next to each other. So I think this could be a very interesting thing Where Angel of Empire, realistically, which again, it'll be interesting to see what approach they take or what approach Flavien takes, is does it just kind of stick with Forte the whole time and then just kind of bank that when all the chips are down and we're in the stretch that Angel of Empire finds something Forte doesn't? And again, the argument you can make, I mean, look, I don't think Forte is regressing. I think someone mentioned it earlier that it kind of plateaued, which I think is the perfect way to put it. It reached its peak at a very strong place, but it hasn't regressed. It just hasn't gotten any better either. But Angel of Empire is progressing. And I think, right at the wire, I think mentioned it about how other horses are just starting to catch up to Forte. And I do see that with Angel of Empire. It's continuing to progress. It's continuing to take steps forward. And I do believe, I think Patrick hit it on the head. I think this will probably be a race with like a 98, 99, 100, 101 is what you need probably to win it. And I don't see why Angel of Empire can't take that next step forward. You certainly have to believe that Brad Cox believes in this horse and thinks it can as well. Moving on to Mage. Man, do I love Mage. I love this horse so much. It's so versatile. I remember on our show, I made the bold statement, which, look, I'll be honest, I was completely wrong about this. But if you guys remember, when we were picking the race with Forte in the Fountain of Youth, I believe you both singled Forte and said it was a wrap. And I was bold and said, this is a horse that's ran one time. I don't know much about it, but I like what I saw in its first race. I think this is the only horse that could beat Forte. Unfortunately, I was a race too early because Forte wiped the floor with Mage the first time they faced off. But in the second time, man, when I was watching Mage in the stretch, I was like, is my horse going to prove, I guess it's not my horse, but is Mage going to prove me right? Is this horse going to get the job done and be the one to take out Forte? So I love everything about this horse. I know it's an inexperienced horse with only 3 races, and that can be a turnoff for people. But I love this horse. Again, it's another one that's taken huge steps forward. I was a little worried it would be one that needed to start at the front, but then, hey, it has a terrible break and then shows that incredible pace. And, it made the first bold move before Forte. And by no means did this horse gas out or get blown by. It just happened that Forte happened to have more in the tank. And I don't see why Mage can't maybe show something different. I also do like that, I don't think it got a bad gate. I think it can make it ever. I love those odds. I don't see any scenario where you're getting 15-1. This horse is just way too talented.
It is the Derby, though.
I guess it is the Derby. And I guess also, again, people from the connections perspective and from the lack of races, for me, I know like Howard and Sean, I'd watch their episode when he did like what he would put the horse's odds at. I would have this horse nowhere near 15-1. I love everything about Mage. I was going to put it second, but I was too invested and too excited with what I saw from Angel of Empire. And I wanted to put my bias aside because I knew a big reason I liked Mage was just because I've been riding this horse from the get-go. Yeah, I love Mage. And then for the last horse, the one I had to quickly throw in, I'll be honest, I had my clear-cut top 3. When you said my 4th, I was between 5, 6, and 10. But since Patrick had already touched on 5 and 10, and I wanted to be different, I'm known for being different on the show. So I threw King's Barnes in because, why not? Again, another Pletcher horse, another one that's inexperienced but undefeated. Looked every bit the part in the LA Derby, has worked very well recently. Again, I know the inexperience is a concern, but it is a nice horse. Again, another one that's figures are continuing to jump. I think this is one where, as much as I've been gassing up getting great odds, this is one where I don't think the odds at 12-1 are ideal. But again, another one that could be in there in the mix. I actually, funny enough, this is another thing that persuaded me. My uncle, who, for those of you who don't know, I remember on my first show I talked about this. He's worked with Wesley Ward in the past and has some connections, and he says that the King's Barnes is his upset if Forte doesn't win. That's who he likes. He talked me into King's Barnes a lot as well. So yeah, that's my top 4. Those are my thoughts, people. Make what you want with it. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I had to make sure outside of Forte I was different somehow, and I am standing strong on my strong opinions.
And I'll tell you what, there is one thing that you actually didn't touch on about Mage that right at the wire beat me to it. He also stumbled bad out of the gate. He did not get out of the gate clean. That's why he was so far back and able to get that clean run. I frankly, maybe that's what hurt him. I don't know if this horse can get the mile and a quarter, although Good Magic by Big Brown of all horses. The distance shouldn't be an issue breeding wise, but the way that he ran last time, granted with the stumble, makes me think that I don't know if this horse necessarily wants all of the mile and a quarter. The other thing that we always talk about is the experience. This horse's 4th race is going to be in the absolute cluster, of the entire year. It always is. And generally, again, speaking very generally, horses with less experience tend to do a a lot worse. Worse is not a good term, but that's all that's coming to my mind right now, than horses that come in with 6, 7 races. And obviously it's to be taken whichever way that you deem fit. But I know that someone else, I know someone else mentioned that in the chat is they don't know what to make of something like that. And Kingsbarns, I think Kingsbarns got it completely his way. I'm not sure how talented he is. And if he goes anywhere near that 10-1 mark, frankly, if he could win, but I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. But that's completely up to your discretion. But guys, I'm bringing up my picks now. I already spoiled it. I did not go with Forte in this year's Derby. Spoilered, I don't even have Forte in my top 3 for my betting. Not saying that he cannot win. He's definitely the most likely horse to win this race. But value perspective, I'm looking elsewhere. And did I go with the hometown hero? Jim Pilars thinks I did. I did not, but I do have the horse in second.
I was going to say, you didn't touch on him.
I went number 14. I went Angel of Empire on top, 2 fills in second, Tapit Trice in third, which you're talking about who should be fired, Howard. He should be fired. Charlie should be fired. He doesn't even have Tapit Trice anywhere. That's who should be fired. But and then I have Forte in fourth, of course. I'm going to touch on these horses really quickly. The 2 horses that need the 1 horse 2 fills who none of you guys had, I'll talk about for a little bit longer, but don't want to step over too many toes. Then we'll end the show. But Angel of Empire is my top pick. I've been going back and forth with this Derby for, oh my God, when did the PPs come out? Monday? Probably 2 weeks before that. This Derby is frankly as wide open as it's been in the past few years. At least ever since I've really started hammering into horse racing, this has been one of the most wide open Derbies that I've seen. And that last race, I know people are always saying, oh, who did Angel of Empire beat? I mean, Pete Visco actually touched on this in an earlier podcast. One of these times we're just going to have to stop saying that because, I mean, you say that for almost every horse, it seems like. And unless they face like absolute monsters and beat them one race, you're always going to say, who did they beat? And this horse, you can only beat who's in front of you. And this horse did it with absolute flying colors last time out in the Arkansas Derby. Closing into a not a fast pace, but not a slow pace by any means, which I think is what you'll get in this year's Derby. I think out of the 14 hole, he sits a really nice trip in the clear, in the middle of the pack, all the way around. I think he doesn't even have to tip out necessarily at the top of the stretch, but I think when he gets clear, I think Pratt's going to have a lot of horse, and he's going to be the one to fire down the stretch and win this year's Derby. Then the steadily improving buyers, as Charlie already touched on, is another big plus for me. This horse has looked great on the track all week at Churchill. Has been ran a bullet 2 back. There's a lot of buzz about this horse. I'm really hoping for that 8-1. 6-1 would be my absolute, or probably 6-1 would be my absolute least I would take on this horse. Although 8-1 is really where I'm looking. If he's under that, I'll probably play him over an exacta or something like that, try to create some value or play him in doubles, which I'm sure I will. You all know I'm an avid daily double enjoyer, but this horse just seems to do it the best. And if he's able to get in the clear on the first Saturday in May, I think this horse has a genuine shot to win the 149th running of the Kentucky Derby. I have 2 fills in second, and I know people are always going to say, oh, he's the hometown hero, Chicago connections, Chicago guy. And I want to touch on what Howard touched on in the show. People are talking about Jareth Loveberry, and they're saying he cannot win this race. That is excuse my language, that is the most bullshit I've ever heard in my entire life. Say that to anyone. Anyone in this race deserves to be here. Jareth Loveberry is a outstanding jockey, and say about what you want where he rides, but where he rides, he does it very well. I mean, 2 fills, there's no other way to say it. He absolutely freaked in that the Jeff Ruby Stakes at Turfway. Absolutely blew by everybody. And again, who did he beat? But this horse is going to sit an absolutely great trip in this spot. He's going to sit in front of Angel of Empire. This horse won the Street Sense Stakes at Churchill in the slop, of course, which might play more to the synthetic race that he ran last time. But just off how he moved in that last race, there's not a singular way in my mind with the trip that I think this horse is going to get that I can leave him off the ticket, especially at a price of 15-1 or higher. And I get, Chicago Connections also plays a soft spot in my heart, but I genuinely think this horse is a major upset to horses like Forte and Angel of Empire. I genuinely do. I have Tapit Trice in third, and I know for the boys back home, they're all, for the hometown podcast guys, I want them to cash their future bet. For all disclosure, my future bet is on Hit Show. I'm extremely sad about the rail draw in this race. I think he still is talented and can take a step forward, but I just want to get that out there. My future bet from back in February is on Hit Show for a nice 4-digit score. It's definitely an outside chance at this point, but I don't think he's necessarily completely out of it by any means, although I think he is hurt with the rail draw. Tapit Trice, look, he has done absolutely nothing wrong. You can argue that he breaks really slow from the gate. Will he be all the way back? I don't think he'll be in last. But I think he's going not. I don't think Louis is going to ask him too much like he did in the Bluegrass Stakes last time out. I think he's going to let him run his race. He's going to be about, I would say, 13th, 14th going into the first turn. And I think from the 5 hole, I think it hinders him a little, but I think Louis Size is going to try everything he can, that he's going to back up, let him run his race, and then shift him into the clear. Because when this horse gets in the clear, man, can this horse absolutely motor home. And if this horse is, in that 8th spot near the top of the stretch, you got to in the clear, you got to watch out for this horse, because this horse is easily talented enough to win this race. It's just a matter of, will his running style hinder him? And I know that's what all the guys are worried about in this race. There's 2 horses that I also want to touch on, and then we'll end the shows. We're going really long here, and I apologize to the boss. Don't chop me off. I swear to God. I don't need to touch on Forte at all. We really hammered that home. The Japanese horse, Derma Sotogake, is going to take a lot of money in this spot. I don't know if he's talented enough. I talked about it with the other horse in the Oaks, with the Japanese horse in the Oaks. This horse has gotten a lot of runs in the clear, is generally midfield, will want to be a little bit more forwardly placed in this spot. Out of the 17 hole, I think no one winning out of the 17 hole. I think that's really just a stat that does not matter, frankly. I know no one's ever won. It's 148 years, but I don't think that's based on the post itself. People have won from the 16, the 18, the 19, the 20. I don't necessarily think the 17 post is some godforsaken, you're in there, you're done. But this horse is going to have to work a post out or work a trip out from the 17 hole. He's going to maybe sit 3 wide. I get it's a quarter of a mile to the first turn, but maybe he gets stuck 3 or 4 wide going into the first turn, wanting to be in that top flight with a lot of these horses. And I just don't know if he's good enough based on figures, time form ratings. I don't know if he is, but he's definitely a major player. He's going to take a lot of money, and at a price most likely to that 8-1, 9-1, 10-1 spot. I like other horses at that price than Derma Sotogake, but I know a lot of people are going to like him, and I'm going to get some crap, but that's my opinion. And then the last horse I want to touch on before we end this show is Practical Move. And I know Patrick touched on him as well. And the other horse is Skinner. I know Skinner's going to take a lot of money. He's going to be that wise guy horse, I think, in this year's Derby. I don't know if you're going to want, for me, it's just another one of those where he's going to be the same running style as a lot of these other horses. And for me, I don't know if he's as good as an Angel of Empire, a Forte, a Tapit Trice. I would rather have those 3. I know he's going to be, I don't even know if he's going to be a good price in this year's Derby. I think he's going to get really bet down. Practical Move, definitely talented, got the right post, but he's had every single race his way. He's gotten perfect trip after perfect trip. This horse will be bet down to 8-1, and I don't want him at that price when he really hasn't had to show any adversity in these spots going forward. But is he candidate? Can he definitely win? He can. I will not be playing him, but good luck to you guys if you are. Guys, this has been a long show, so I appreciate everyone. The viewership's been great throughout this whole thing. it's the best weekend of the year for horse racing. There's nothing like it. The 149th running of the Kentucky Derby is this Saturday. I like Angel of Empire. The two guys to my right and under me are going with Forte, but be on tomorrow to find out who all of us panelists love. And we're going to go into a massive deep dive into the Kentucky Derby itself. So please tune in at 8 p.m. Eastern if you're in for that. But again, thank you all to the chat, for everyone that subscribed throughout and everyone watching this entire time. We could not do it without you. We're all super appreciative. But be there tomorrow for our biggest show of the entire year, Kentucky Derby Roundtable at 8 p.m. Eastern. For my co-hosts, Charlie Freeman and Patrick Kuenzel, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, of episode number 20 of Bettin N Boozin on the HHH Racing podcast. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.